All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and I hope that everyone had a great weekend in Browns Creek. We got pretty perfect weather. Even after Friday's deluge, it was dumping really well up until about 7 a.m. Saturday morning. And after that, I think the weather was pretty perfect, especially Sunday. I did not get roasted, burnt, or otherwise sun damaged in any way, given the overcast nature of the weather. So that was fantastic. The temperatures were pretty perfect as well. So all in all, thank you, Elizabeth Garner, for making sure that our weather was perfect for the weekend for our first event. Some league stats. And we are sitting at 53 teams. That is the total that we will have this season. We have 506 licensed coaches. We added four more female coaches for a total of 124 and 16 more male coaches for a total of 382. We have 845 riders total, and that will be the total that's sustained throughout the rest of the season now that season registration is finished. And we added 7 high school students from the time that we talked last time, as well as 3 middle school student athletes. And then big news, we are just about to cross the 2,000 TTC hours mark with an additional 229.25 hours being added since our last coaches conversation. So I think all in all, TTC is really knocking it out of the park this season, and we haven't even gotten to the trail work week. So we've got some big things coming up that are going to definitely push us towards that 3,000 hour goal. Some important dates to remember: March 16th and 17th, the Salisbury Race Weekend, and a couple of dates that go along with that. So the Sunday prior is the deadline for getting in any category position exceptions. And then that Sunday is also going to be the deadline for registering for the race for those that have not gone and already registered. Sunday prior to Salisbury is going to be the deadline for registering and making sure that they're able to attend that weekend. The next deadline is March 18th through the 24th. That is the NCICL Trail Work Week. Hopefully, you have been able to manage to put together some sort of trail project. We reached out to our local Thorba chapter, and I think there are 3 teams in our area that are going to have 3 separate trail work events happening on that week in conjunction with our Sorba chapter. So we've got some pretty big things going here in Northwest North Carolina, and hopefully you are doing the same. All right. On to the news kind of main topics for this evening. And we've got, see, I've got someone typing in the document. Friday, yes, thank you for correcting that. It's not Sunday for category petitions, it's Friday at 11:59 p.m. And then registration is the Sunday. All right. Couple of things that came up, and I wanted to address them so that we were clear as a group of coaches. Helmets are not required when a bike is secured on a trainer for warm up. So SAs can be on a trainer warming up and not be wearing a helmet. They may also use earbuds or headphones when they're on trainers, but that's these exceptions to those 2 rules of not having these only apply when the bike is attached to a trainer. So once the bike is off the trainer, then the helmet rule and the earbud, the headphones rule then come into play. I was wrong in addressing coaches about full face helmets. There is no longer a rule about this in the NICA handbook. And so the only guidance that I can give you is that originally this rule was in place because of concerns about hydration. So if you have a student athlete that is utilizing a full face helmet, which is perfectly legal according to the rules, as long as it meets the requirements of being certified by one of the governing bodies, which most, if not all, of your full face helmets are going to, then they really should be using some sort of hydration system where they're able to stick a hose into their mouth rather than a water bottle, because drinking out of a water bottle while riding or racing is problematic difficult and downright almost impossible. I see that there's a couple of things in chat, and Jeff LeBlanc, you had raised your hand. So I'm assuming that that has something to do with this full face helmet rule. So, Jeff.
No, it has to do with the trainer rule. That
Okay.
does not apply to rollers, I take it, because it's not
Correct,
attached.
because rollers are not holding up the bike in any way, so it is still considered riding the bike.
Correct. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a nuance in the language of the rule, and I think the key verbiage there is attached. So because the bike is not attached to a trainer or to a set of rollers, unless it's something like feedback rollers, which actually the front wheel comes off and is mounted on, that's perfectly fine. So as long as the bike is attached to the trainer in some way, that's the only thing that is the qualifier. I'm gonna drop the chat down.
We're looking good on chat so far, Sean.
All right,
Feel free to
perfect.
fire me if you don't feel that's the case.
No problem. I just saw three things. I was like, okay, there's obviously some discussion on this. All right. Another thing, all single lap races, this is sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, as well as HS3, can receive outside assistance without penalty. We've had this as a rule in our league for multiple seasons now. And the thing that most concerns me is this is what a coach reported to me. A sixth grade girl whose pedal came off and adults were yelling that she couldn't get help. So she spent a few minutes putting it on herself until a coach came over and helped her from another team. He whispered to her to not tell anyone so she wouldn't get a penalty. My concern is that last piece. Coaches, this is a youth development organization. We are here for positive youth development. Positive sporting behavior is a huge part of what we do. It is not positive sporting behavior to not tell anyone that you received outside assistance for the sake of not getting a penalty. And in fact, if they are in a race that is multi-laps where getting outside assistance does incur a penalty, the penalty is doubled if they don't self-report. So that is 100% wrong. And if you are that coach, do not do this again. If you are a head coach, please discuss with your coaches this incident and let them know that that is not acceptable, because that is not what we're here for. And that's not a part of our culture. We are not win at every cost. We are not here to be unfair competitors. That is not the youth development that we are trying to instill in our youth. Does everyone understand that? Couple of other things. Course preview notes. So course preview notes that I saw and that were also brought in some comments that were emailed to myself and Brian. So just making sure that these are coach-led and maintaining ratios. I saw huge groups. So whenever we're talking about coach ratios, remember 1 to 6, 2 to 8. Okay. 2 to 8, one coach in front, one coach in back. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have more than 8 student athletes, you just pile more coaches in there and create a larger group. All right. So, what I want you to understand is discrete groups of 2 to 8, 1 to 6. All right. There were some very large groups going out all together. And what was happening was differences in riding ability, all those sorts of things were starting to cause where on the yellow multi-lap event course preview, it was slower than when I went out with my single lap team. So this is one of those things, like your cooperation in this, you're divvying up, even if it is, I have 2 coaches and I have 12 student athletes, divide them into 2 groups, say you all wait here, we'll be back, do a lap, come back, grab the other group, go out and do a lap. Remember that they've got that green flag where they can buddy system and go out there and ride at their own pace. So this course preview really realistically doesn't need to be more than a lap in order for the student athletes just to see it and discuss it with a coach. After that, that green flag time zone is whenever they can go out and ride and do whatever. So make sure that you are kind of adhering to that so that we can have some timely stuff. One of the issues with this course is that some of the things you need to carry your momentum through, and showing student athletes how to carry their momentum, ride up through routes and things like that with momentum is kind of the key to what you're trying to preview with them. And when you're getting backed up because of the traffic in front of you, even trying to maintain a healthy buffer, all of a sudden you're running into people at these sort of tricky sections. It's not creating that flow that we want to see with these coach led. So just maintain this idea that this is me taking out my group of student athletes for one lap, and then green is when they're going to be able to go out and do some more. Please respect each period's restrictions. If you have a single lap student athlete who can't make it for the single lap, don't take them out during the multi lap. That's not appropriate. All right. I've had people come to me and they're like, well, I was telling everybody to just, be patient. That's not the expectation, and that is not what you need to be doing. Like, you need to hold them out. And then during the green, take them out. You and that rider, because green, everybody is respectful of everybody else who's on course. Smaller groups, much easier to deal with differences in speed variables. And then make sure that you maintain your group cohesion. So a lot of times I was seeing coaches, and it looked like coaches following student athletes. And then someone told me, oh, well, that's because the group's leader is up the trail. You should be maintaining visual contact with your sweep. You should not be stringing your group out so that it is kind of every person for themselves in the middle. Make sure that you keep that group tight and that you maintain visual contact with your sweep as you move through the course. Are there any questions or concerns about that?
Hey, Sean, Ryan Donnell asked the question. So the request is that for all course previews that we limit the SA group numbers to 8 or less.
Well, that's maintaining our coach led and maintaining ratios, which we've always messaged. So yes, 8 is the maximum number of student athletes that can be in a group with 2 coaches.
Hey, Sean, this is Ryan.
Yes.
I get the ratio, but I guess this was the first time, at least I've heard, that it's not just a ratio that you can calculate. You have 100 student athletes and you need, 20 coaches or whatever, but that you really want the small groups, which I get, but this is new to me, and I imagine other people would want to know this, and I'm not sure how many people are going to be able to hear this on this call. That's all.
Gotcha. This is the way it's always been. That's the reason why we have those ratios, is that this is the idea, is that we're not piling 40 kids out with 10 coaches all in a big mass on any trail at any time. Like that rule exists so that we're kind of functioning in these discrete units of maximum of 10 people, 2 coaches and 8 student athletes, so that we aren't clogging up the trail with a big group of kids. And I know that can be problematic given student athlete numbers and coach ratios and those sorts of things. And I have that own juggling that I have to do with my student athletes and the coach staff that I have. But that is the spirit of the rule and why we have that in place. And so maintaining that for this will help kind of facilitate that larger number of people trying to get out on the course and preview it and still be respectful of each other. We also talked about in the coaches meeting about divide your groups into experienced and inexperienced, and then send your experienced athletes out first with coaches, and then send your inexperienced athletes out after all the teams have had a chance to get their experienced athletes out. And then that way, that kind of expectation of course preview is a little bit slower, even if it's one lap or multi-lap. So that sort of division 2 helps. And then the very, worst case scenario, just tell the kids, like, we'll be back and then we're going to take you out for a lap. And you take them out. And that way you're maintaining that smaller size group as you go. All right. Any more on that? All right. So the biggest issue that I think we had was crossing course tape. And there was some egregious instances of this that I personally witnessed. And one of the worst was a woman with a dog on a leash crossing the double tape in the start chute after being told by two separate course volunteers not to cross the tape 30 seconds ahead of a start that had already come over the radio that we had a 30-second warning. When I went and addressed this with her, she was very dismissive, told me two people had already talked to her. And the tenor of what I got from a lot of the instances that I personally dealt with or witnessed and saw people dealing with was people doing what they wanted and then saying they were sorry and expecting that to be enough. And this is a major, major risk management and student athlete safety issue. If you will recall, 1 year ago, we were having a major discussion on this after action call from this race about a dog that got under the tape in the start chute and caused a crash of, I believe, the varsity boys field. And that's why we have the leash dog policy that we have in place. So this kind of, I'm going to do what I want to do and then say sorry, and that's going to be the end of it. I'm letting you know that this is the only race that there will be warnings issued for this. And from this point forward, there will be team penalties issued for this whenever it is reported to me as chief referee. Are there any questions, concerns, or comments about that?
What is the point deduction per team? Is there like a tiered level to this? Not that I won't be tiered, but just to make sure it's clear for everybody in all teams.
There is a tiered point system that is in place for some other behaviors, and we're going to follow that for specific ignoring of any race volunteer, race official, or anyone that is in a capacity to control traffic and tape or who witnesses someone ducking under the tape. And that's going to be applied from Rule 6.9, 8.3, which says the chief referee can levy penalties that are dealing with things that they deem unsafe behavior of coaches, co-coaches, parents, student athletes. And so this is what that is going to fall under, is that this is a safety issue and it is not being taken seriously. And so team penalties will hopefully cause people to think twice, because they won't be getting just a warning that they can say, I'm sorry. They will actually be incurring a penalty against the team that they are a part of.
Hey, Sean, Austin Walker has a question about what is the protocol for crossing the course in the woods when there is no tape. And before I told him there is no crossing of the course, even if there's no tape, I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I mean, there is really no kind of guidelines on crossing the course like that, and it's understandable that crossing the course outside of taped areas is going to happen. I guess the biggest guidance then is always looking in the direction of traffic and making sure that people are crossing safely, and that would be something that, I would hope all of you, being out on course, like being the multiple eyes that there are, and your concerns for student athlete safety and risk management, that you would be giving people heads up on what proper behavior is. There are some clear definitions in the rule book about running alongside the course, riding alongside the course, which I do see people do. And I would have you please talk with not just your parents, but your coaches, because I see coaches riding around and riding along the course talking, and that is clearly in the rules that that is not supposed to be taking place. So make sure that spectators are on foot, that they understand they shouldn't be running alongside course, and that if they do cross in an area that doesn't have any tape, that they're doing so in a safe and aware manner. All right. Yes, Elise.
Concerning the dog rule, Brian posted in the chat, he posted the Google Doc for the rule and it states 50 feet. I just wanted to let everyone know that, and Nona has also mentioned the 8 feet, that a parent from my team told me that they overheard on the PA that the rule is 8 feet. So just wanted to make sure that we had a firm clarification of what the rule is.
Yeah, we thought it was 50 feet and then we heard 8 feet over the PA. So, and fully
Yeah.
support 50 feet.
Yeah, for everyone, that's why I shared the policy, and I'll give a little grace to my brand new announcing team that was trying to meet the intent of keeping dogs away from the tape. But yeah, it is 50 feet to ensure we have Fido not crossing the tape again. So that's why I linked the pet policy. Thanks for asking the question.
So 50 feet. Other questions, concerns, or comments about this particular issue? All right, perfect. Now I can exit out of stern teacher mode and go to the positives. No injury incidents required EMS intervention the entire weekend. So fantastic. And no penalties were levied for anything of any kind. Now, this makes me a little nervous. In either you all have done an excellent job in taking care of the top things. I witnessed one coach hop on a bike without a helmet on their head, and it's because they had a hat. Being a person who wears hats, I know that a hat and a helmet feel very similar. And I just said, "Hey, coach," and tapped my head. He jumped right off, was very apologetic, did not levy any penalty. That's not the point of what that was about. But didn't see any student athletes doing anything. Saw student athletes on trainers without their helmets with their headphones on. Had a coach come to me and ask for clarification on that. Gave him the clarification that I gave all of you. So the only other things that were reported to me were issues with passing. And they weren't anything that anyone wanted to report as a formal penalty. And I had some discussions with a couple of you about particular student athletes on your team that were identified to me. And I think that's just one of those ongoing coaching things. And it's also a perception issue as well. So making sure that we just keep addressing the passing, I think we're going to be fine with that. It doesn't always work out the way everyone would like for it to, but I think we're doing a great job. So please let this be that you all are doing a great job and that there was just nothing really going on, and not what I kind of momentarily suspected was that you're just settling everything out there in the woods. Like if there's a disagreement, you're just settling it and getting on with whatever it is you're doing. Hopefully you're not taking the law into your own hands and doing something out in the woods that you shouldn't be. But I think all in all, everything was great. And I think everyone, other than the issues with crossing the course, I think everything went really, really smoothly on Sunday. One thing that I observed, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Sean, this has been, I was going to ask for clarification on the feed zone of trying to pour or throw water on students as they go through.
That is not allowed.
Copy that.
And that was the training that I gave the feed zone marshal, was that that's not allowed.
Thanks, sir.
So yeah. And I gave the feed zone marshal clear instructions of of what was acceptable, what was not acceptable. And he seemed to take it all in and be not have any questions. So I trust that he did a great job. I worked the finish line in order to kind of look at how we're doing those earned lap cutoffs. And I noticed something, and I can see where this could have caused issues had it been a volunteer in place. And that was in wave 4, there are 3 different cutoff times, and they're all like one after the other by about 20 minutes. And when we started to do the first cutoff, a parent immediately like started getting on me about it. And one of the things that we have at the finish line that we're going to be kind of utilizing this season is at that cutoff point, which is the exit chute. We have a board that has the number plates and it has their earned lap cutoff times. And so that's what we're referencing. And that's all I did with this woman was just point and said, that is what we're going by. That is what was published. That is what we are doing. And she still had issues. And I was like, not every racer is being pulled at this point, because that's what she was trying to make it out to be. And so I can see where as a volunteer, you would just be like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going on. So we will have a finish line official who is taking care of this from this point forward. And it should not be any issues from this point forward. It went really smoothly. We pulled everybody according to time. We were in communication with timing, who was keeping the official time of the race. They let us know when the earned lap cutoff time had been reached. We pulled tape midway across the course, looked at the colors of the plates, and directed students accordingly, either to exit or to continue on. So this went really smoothly, and I hope that we continue to be as smooth with it from this point forward. The main issue is just that wave 4, because of those multiple cutoff times. That's the one that's the trickiest. The others are just one cutoff time. Questions or concerns about that? All right. I would like your feedback now. So I have a plus delta chart. So if you're unfamiliar with plus deltas, pluses are things that went well. Deltas are things that need to be worked on in order to make positive changes before the next race. So now is kind of the open time for you all to share your feedback from your perspectives so that we can work on things ahead of Salisbury.
This probably doesn't pertain to Salisbury, but for the adventure course, I thought that was great. If we do that again, can we extend the start time or the finish time beyond 4? Because what happened with our group was we were still working with kids in the yellow group, and we thought we were going to be able to take the kids from the red group on the adventure course at like 4:15, but it was already closed.
Okay.
So I was wondering if we could extend that a little bit longer for the kids that were in the red and didn't want to do the green flag, but wanted to go do the adventure.
So parallel with the hours of the race course preview, parallel that with the adventure course.
Yeah, and if I mean the adventure course was a little longer, so maybe you'd have to cut it off at 5 instead of 5:15. But
Okay.
yeah, thanks.
All right.
Hey, Sean, this
Yes.
is Brian Dixon from the Hellbenders. I just had something positive to say. I really appreciated you guys setting up like a warm-up loop. That was absolutely amazing. Our kids really appreciated being able to warm up, on single track rather than just kind of in a field. And it really, I think, got them, not only their bodies warmed up, but their kind of heads in the game of being able to hit the single track you know, as warmed up as they could be. So I really appreciate that.
Awesome. Was that length kind of manageable?
Yeah, it was perfect. But you know, I had like 3 or 4 coaches that I was that were kind of itching to get on a bike anyway, and I just sort of had them manage the student athletes like by waves, you know, to sort of you know, everybody kind of had a coach to help them warm up, and boy, they were really much more ready to race than they have been in the past. So
Nice.
the link was perfect because it was kind of like a 10-minute ish lap, so you could sort of do 1 or 2 or 3 depending on, you know, what you felt like doing. So it was great.
And what team were you with, Brian?
The Henderson Hellbenders.
And you guys took one of the team prizes. You had a whole bunch of student athletes do really well. So obviously, maybe the warm up loop was your secret performance advantage. So marginal gains with the warm up loop.
Yeah, I don't think it's marginal. I think that was the advantage for sure.
Nice. All right. Anything that we need to work on? Jeff LeBlanc.
Yeah, Sean, I'm just gonna throw out something. Is Brian Wood on this thing as well? Because Brian may want to, you know, he might be able to answer this a little better. It was just an incident, and it was one of my students, and not a problem. He was in a pretty significant crash, and so the course marshal, you know, we got him off the course, checked him over, and just kind of made sure he was okay, which was great. But then his answer was, you have to wait for medical personnel to come here and clear you before I will allow you back on the course. And that was the course marshal's, you know, answer to the student. And when medical personnel, I guess, was called, because when they showed up, they said, this isn't our call. And so maybe Brian Wood can clarify that. I am glad that they held him up, checked him over, made sure he was okay. But had they waited even longer for medical personnel, he'd never gotten back in the race at all. So maybe a little clarification, because all course marshals are coaches. So whether they know, obviously, we've taken concussion protocols, we check students, we make sure they're okay. But I don't believe there was a requirement for actual medical personnel to show up on scene and make the decision to allow the student back into the race.
Okay. All right. Matt Bush.
I just had a positive. I thought that the call ups and the start times went really smoothly compared to previous seasons. It just keeps getting better. Nice work on the statistics.
That was a lot of work. I think Jim Otto, you were a part of that. There were a couple others. I'm sorry that I'm blanking on your names, but yeah, a lot of work went into that, and I think it was really, really evident. All right, Jim, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to say that was probably the best start loop you guys have had at a race. It really seemed like kids were spread out by the time they hit the single track. So did a good job of citing that.
Awesome.
The one thing that was new this year, that the 2 jumps near the highway, I think in the past we always bypassed those, and particularly the second one, the middle schoolers, half of them probably were trying to roll it, and they were catching air and landing heavy on the front tire. I saw at least 3 crashes there. So you know, it's difficult to roll that smoothly at high speed, especially for the middle schoolers. So next year I'd take a look at that as far as whether that should be part of the course or not.
So yeah, I can see that bucking those student athletes. They keep getting lippier, is what I noticed. Like those jumps keep getting more poppy.
Yeah, the second one in particular really had a lip on it that you had to pretty much, even the sixth grade girls were getting air going over it. So anyway, but the start was great. If you can figure that out at every race, that would be really good.
Ben Harbor and Todd Lester are listening, so
Yeah, I just ask you to close your eyes and ears at Salisbury and pretend that it's a mile and a half long.
Yeah.
I love you, Jim, but I'm not a miracle worker on Salisbury.
Yeah. Wait till everyone sees Danville.
Yeah, yeah, you'll
And
you'll
then
hate me at Salisbury. You'll
I
want to kill
can't
me at
wait for your
Danville.
comments after that one, Jim. But thank you for the feedback.
I might be exiled to another state somewhere.
all right. Jeff LeBlanc.
Yeah, big kudos to timing. That live results app. I mean, parents were running around with their phones looking at it. The boxes that were on course. Big upgrade this season was that live result stuff. Big upgrade and big kudos for Jeremy and the team that put all that together.
All right. Matt Bush.
This is actually the other Bush.
Gotta
Diane
change your
Bush.
screen name. I'm sorry.
I'm sharing today. I thought it also went great. One thing I noticed working the finish line is that there were several athletes in the boys' higher levels who had computers covering their race plates. I don't know if there's a policy about that being visible, but we were not able to mark them as they went past during our backup.
So obscured race plates.
Yes, that's right. They just had their Garmin over it. Some of them were popping wheelies. We couldn't read those, but we just wrote wheelie. But some of them actually had their computers over their race plates, or their race plates were behind their cables. We just missed a lot of them coming past because we couldn't see.
There
Hey,
were
Sean, Brian, I'll interject for that great timing team. Jeremy Kavanaugh in particular did say that a lot of race plates were essentially horizontal and very hard for the scoring assistants to see them. So if coaches could just pay attention for that at the next race to make sure they're vertical and seen from the front, I think that would help the hand jammers with the timing team. So thank you, Diane, for bringing up that point. It is completely valid.
Yeah, I know Todd and I looked at some during the staging, and the sending off those high school categories is where we saw it the most. The time in between, once we saw them and trying to adjust them, we didn't have the time to try to fix those student athletes. But we certainly brought it to their attention and asked them to correct. So thank you for calling it out.
All right. Michael Kleiman.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. This is a minor point. This time around, there were no lines drawn in the feed zone. I know those were there last year. That would be super helpful to help direct us parents. So just to make it easier for our SAs to see us when they round that corner.
Agreed.
Part of that,
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
excuse me, part of that is location, location, location. Spray paint does not stick to sand very well. Down on the other side, it was grass, so that made it a whole lot easier. And Ben and I actually did discuss that when we set up the feed zone, that was going to be a problem.
Okay.
And did you
That
say
might be something
Jeremy-
to direct to the volunteer that's working in there, just to help corral the parents in that case.
So
Yeah,
I-
basically we could use the troll heads there potentially. I just don't know how well that would work either.
So
But-
I gave him kind of visual instructions on what kind of to visualize the lanes by either the end of the easy up that was in there, the end of the post, which was just beyond it. And so I can see where the lane not present for the student athlete was probably an issue. That I think won't be as big of an issue whenever we get to somewhere with some grass that we can spray paint.
Okay. Good to know. Thanks.
Sean, to clarify, for the feed zone, it should be coaches handing bottles, not just non-coach staff, parents?
It can be anybody who's identifiable
Yes,
as being a
okay.
part of a team. So they have to have some type of
Marking.
team related thing, even if it's just a piece of tape that says the name of the team on it.
Okay.
That is what we need. I would really like, the biggest issues I've seen have been when you grab a random parent and tell them to go to the feed zone and they have no clue what they're there for. They've never done a feed, they don't know what they're doing, and so they become problematic for kind of everybody involved. And that's where I think having a little bit of training, I mean, it's not rocket science. Bike racers do it all the time, and they're not the smartest people in the world. So, you know, you can train somebody, give them a little bit of training, and tell them what they need to do, how to hold bottles, those sorts of things, and then they're at least equipped with what they need to go into the feed zone and feel ready to go. Other either positive or things for improvement.
Hey, Sean.
Yes.
There was a comment from Austin about the paint in the start line before the Sunday morning. It would help SAs pick the appropriate gear for the start. Yeah, we try to do that sometimes, depending on how wet it is. Again, spray paint doesn't stick real well. We had the first line of trail heads there, but another good way, just for everybody's situational awareness, the start of the snow fencing is basically the start line. There's a small gate there with red tape on it. Right there is the start line, and that's where we step out so we don't get run over. So just think of that snow fencing as the start. If that helps, if we don't have it already set up.
So it's the beginning of the snow fencing or the end of the snow fencing? End of the snow fencing.
The beginning.
Beginning of the snow fencing.
Beginning. There'll be tape down the sides, and that's the start chute where we line them up. And then at the end of that tape, there'll be red tape and an entrance like a crossing gate, and then the snow fencing begins. That's the actual start.
All right. More positives or improvements?
I asked for clarification from Maryland on the parking and pit zone during the race.
I received a email about a team that was driving into the pit zone to pack before the races were done.
Yeah, so I think during race day we have up the signs that say do not enter, like we had at the end of those porta johns. But I think for the future we could probably put up the pit zone closed to defer people from driving into the pit until when we open it up. I know our announcers made an announcement call that said pit zone would open at 3:45 this past Sunday. So there are designated times that we don't want vehicles in the pit zone. And it's again for a safety aspect of everybody involved. And for most people, if you know or if you've been to Salisbury and Mayodan, you get to drive up to the edge. You cannot drive into pit. Salisbury will drive down and come back out. And Danville, you'll have a circle around like we do at Browns Creek. So there will be designated times that you can unload and load, posted on the flyer, and same for Sunday. If we missed the Sunday, we apologize and we'll add it for the future.
All right. Any more positives or improvements? Jeff LeBlanc.
Go.
Okay. Hey, Sean, I do have a positive and a not so much a concern, but first of all, thank you coaches for stepping up and volunteering. Please extend Jenny Wood and my thanks as well to your parents. We were at 100% for the weekend, which is really amazing. And so we want to thank you for that. You have heard me say, you have heard us say that we cannot do this without you. And so people showed up, they signed in, they were on time. We really, really appreciate that. The concern that I have, and I want to address this because the majority of people on this call are coaches. We have some coaches who have volunteered to fill the course marshal slots that we have. We had several coaches who did not go to attend the training, who did not check in and just went to a course marshal station. First of all, I'm not exactly sure how you can even do that unless you have volunteered in this course before. And I know this race was a little bit different, but if you are serving as a roving course marshal or a static marshal, it is vitally important that you please go to your assigned training that goes with your shift slot, and please sign in before so that we know that you're signed in and that you get all the information that you need to go before you go out on the course. That's all I have, Sean. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
It's Debbie, the photographer. I just wanted to say it was really nice having the start line and the finish so close together. I actually finally got photos of the sixth grade, the one lappers, and that was really nice to be able to still get all the starts and also all the one lappers. So that was really neat. But it was nonstop. Awesome day.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. Brian Russell, do you have anything that you would like to add? You might want to use your microphone voice.
I just want to remind everyone that Sean put me in charge of the chat window when this thing started and got me all distracted and flustered, but I think we're okay now. Thank you again, Sean, for letting the league director speak at a meeting. I did want to close on a couple things. Thank you for all the coaches. Sean, I think you mentioned this earlier about their attention to detail, whether that was from a coaching perspective, in terms of true skills training or just passing information to parents. The overarching response I got throughout the weekend was that everything went pretty smoothly. And not that it surprises me, because the staff and all the volunteers that Diane mentioned are phenomenal, but we introduced a lot of new things this weekend. And when you come away with no significant injuries, like Sean mentioned, and no penalties, that is a very successful event. for us. So kudos to you all for getting a great start to the 2024 season. I just want to mention early on and start messaging for Salisbury, and maybe because dogs are on my mind because of the pet policy we spent a couple minutes on tonight. Has anyone seen the dog whisperer? Does anyone remember Caesar Milan? The dog whisperer, and his true trick wasn't training dogs, it was training the human, and the fact that dogs react to how the humans react. And so I'll just message ahead of Salisbury that it's a very restrictive venue. Ben mentioned it, and Jim, you're talking about the big start line. Those that have been to Salisbury before know there is like a choke point. The race course crosses like the one entrance and exit to our infield and pit zone. And so I'll just ask in advance for everyone to have a lot of patience as we interject some new things for Salisbury. We'll communicate that as often and as early as we can, how traffic will flow through the venue. We'll take on board your suggestions for the sustains and improves into Salisbury, but it is a different place. One of the things that makes Browns Creek pretty cool is just all the space we have. We don't have that at Salisbury. So just everyone keep your head on a swivel. Pay attention to what's going on at Salisbury. We'll be a little tighter in there. We don't want that kind of negative energy when we're all stressed out and worried about kind of that restricted space transferring to our student athletes, because it will in fact impact them and their fun and their enjoyment and maybe even their performance out there at Salisbury. So kudos everyone for a great first event. We're already looking forward to round number 2, but it is a little bit different. So thanks, Sean, for giving me a couple minutes to address the crowd.
No problem. I also want to recognize that a coach went out with their student athletes on the adventure course and found all 4 mushrooms that I described in the coaches meeting. They found the lion's mane, they found the wood ears, which were tricky to find. They found the turkey tail, and then they found the one that neither one of us could identify. So please, some of your student athletes, that adventure passport is just, it's gold to them. They love checking things off in that. And so having someone on your team that can work with those student athletes, or maybe just make it for the whole team, but that adventure passport, there's a lot of kids that are getting a lot of benefit out of that. So kudos to those of you that are already working with it. And, I encourage all of you to check it out. All right. Is there anything else that we need to discuss before I let all of us go? Because we are coming up on our 9 o'clock end point, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
The zero heckling policy for coaches and parents to essays.
Yeah, 100%. So anything that gets said to student athletes on course should be couched in positives. And I think we had an incident where it was discussing the way another student athlete was looking, like they looked like they're about to blow up or whatever. Like, we want to be positive in everything. And remember that positive sporting behavior is what not only we expect of our essays, but we expect our coaches and our parents to be modeling that for our student athletes as well. So make sure that you have talks with your coaches and with your parents who may go to other racing, which is not the same culture as what we have here, and making sure that we maintain our culture and our values of supporting everyone and making sure that everyone is able to be successful in their own way without putting anyone down. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Marilyn. Thank you. Anything else that anyone would like to discuss before we break?
Just a funny that Todd and I did at the start line. We asked the students to have fun, be safe, enjoy the race, and told multiple categories not to bite each other. Just for the record, no one in 6th grade boys bit anybody on the start line. Just our way of breaking the ice and relieving tension for the students. And if I did, I had dentures, and it probably didn't hurt that bad anyway.
they're always such a bundle of nerves on the start line. And so saying little things like, who needs to pee right now? And everybody raises their hand. So little things that get them to like, you know, break out of that mindset is good because you can just see like how nervous some of them are at the starts. Fantastic. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much. If you have any questions or concerns or things that you need to discuss with me, by all means, please, email myself or Brian, and we will be more than happy to discuss that with you. Thank you all for coming and have a good evening.